Māori forestry interests have lost a High Court bid to prevent the Crown announcing reforms to the emissions trading scheme. Te Taumata, a trade group that represents the forestry sector, and Ngā Paua Tāne, the Māori Forestry Association, claim the government have failed to work with Māori on the issue. The chair of Te Taumata, Chris Karamia Ainsley, Inslee, nor Te Whānau Apa Nui Ngāti Porou Te Whakatohia, is with us now. Tēnā koe e hoa. Thanks for joining us.
Kia ora, Neil, and kia ora to all of our listeners.
Now, why did you feel it important to launch court action over this issue?
Look, you have to sort of look back in time. Over the last year or so, the New Zealand government, led by the Minister of Climate Change, James Shaw, started to promote policies around forestry that were incredibly prejudicial to Māori interests. And specifically what he was starting to promote was through law, to legislate away the rights of Māori to decide what Māori landowners could do or couldn't do on Māori land. So he was specifically looking to prevent Māori landowners from planting fast-growing exotic or pine trees on their land. Now, that was at the heart of the issue. So we started the discussion with Minister James Shaw about a year or so ago and said, no, you can't do this. You're going to legislate away Māori rights. And it's a big issue, Neil, in that in our, if you like, regions like especially Northland or the East Coast, where we have Māori land, still a reasonably large amount of Māori land, but much of that land is marginal land. And really, it doesn't have many other, if you like, practical development options other than planting some of these tree crops to create these forests that stabilize land. So the impact on Māori was going to be big. An independent bit of analysis that we had at the time estimated the cost to Māori landowners by government proposing to do this was estimated at worst case $10 billion, and potentially up as high as $15 or $16 billion. And so we started a discussion with Minister James Shaw at the time and said, look, you can't do this. You're effectively going to legislate away Māori property rights. We invited Minister James Shaw and the Prime Minister to come and meet with us face-to-face in Rotorua. That invitation was extended by the late Sir Toby Curtis. Government refused to attend that discussion, choosing instead to go through the normal government consultation process with officials. Now, we were saying, well, that doesn't work. Come and have a talk to us. Talk practically about and hear from our people from around the country. They refused to do that. And that's really what brought us to the point of trying to use a legal process, the High Court, to prevent the government from continuing to promote these prejudicial policies for Māori. And that was the...
Look, it astonishes me that a conversation is a conversation. Why are we not continuing to have conversations? There's more legal action pending, right? What outcome are you hoping for this time?
Yeah, there is more legal action, but if I can make one other point, importantly, if we look back in history, that what the government is proposing to rule out these options is akin to foreshore and seabed. This is exactly what happened to Māori people some years ago. That was perpetuated by the Labour government, where the government panicked when the Māori Land Court issued a ruling in allowing Māori to make a claim to the Māori Land Court for customary rights for foreshore and seabed. And we know what happened to that. The government panicked under the Prime Minister of the day, Helen Clark, and who introduced legislation under urgency that effectively ruled out that option for Māori to take an application to the Māori Land Court. So the government panicked, and that's what led to one of the ministers of the day, Dame Tariana Turia, crossing the floor and voting against her own party, which led to the formation of the Māori Party that we have today. So this is really what is being promoted here again by Minister James Shaw, to rule out these options. So last night we met with our legal team and directed them, instructed them to do two things: to trigger a judicial review of the High Court's decision, to promote how prejudicial these decisions of the government are. What we've been asking for is the government to push pause on going out and publicly promoting these policies that are prejudicial to Māori. So that's the first thing, Neil. But also this week, we will be filing with the Waitangi Tribunal a claim and seeking urgency against Minister James Shaw, again, from promoting these policies. And in the next week or so, we will be filing also into the United Nations under the United Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
Yep.
So the issues are really, really big for our people. We're not going to drop the ball on this issue. I just can't understand why the government, particularly Minister James Shaw, if you look at what's happening to the polls right now, the Green Party is struggling in the polls. You look at what's happening with National Coalition Partner, they've got their own problems right now. And in fact, I describe it as probably a bit of a train wreck right now with all of the issues that are going on with the Labour Party. It just mind boggles. Yeah. Just can't understand why the government would want to pick this sort of fight on a big issue, legitimate issue for our Māori people at this time going into a general election. It just doesn't make sense.
Yep, no, understand that. We just want a conversation. Chair of Te Taumata, Chris Karamea Inslee, appreciate your time today and all the best for driving for better outcomes for Māori. Ngā mihi.
Kia ora, Neil, and kia ora to all of our listeners.